Good morning. Welcome to All People's Church, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Julia Sexton, and I'm one of your co-celebrants today with my buddy Julie Evelyn. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, spoken word, and a time of reflection and inspiration for as a religious community. Let us come to be together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others attending this service. We especially welcome those of you who are visiting today. If you haven't already done so, please take a few minutes after the service to sign in at the visitors table by the front door. This way you can be placed on our mailing list to receive our monthly newsletter and weekly emails. I don't have any announcements that I can see. Is nobody got anything? So please settle comfortably, and we'll have a musical prelude from Misha.
Come from the Reverend Sarah Eileen Lawal. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with the courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith, with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all that is there and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, an open-hearted love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, we rise. We now invite you to stand as you are able in body or spirit for the lighting of our chalice, our opening hymn, and our spoken affirmation. Our chalice lighting words are from Maureen Killeran. In these hard times, let us look first to the response of love. In the midst of challenge, may our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement that our values may guide our choices. Let us look first to the response of love. Our opening hymn is hymn number 131 in the gray hymnal. The words will also be up on the screen. Love will guide us.
Spoken affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. I'm going to call on Sarah Burrell Harrop, our Director of Religious Exploration, and her assistant Lucas for our story for all ages.
Come bring it. But you just Alright. What is that? What do you think that is? Is it dirt? Yes. Yes, it is dirt. Okay. What does it mean? What do you do with dirt? You don't, yeah, it's a little too deep to touch it, maybe later. But what do you normally do with dirt? What do you do with it? You wet it for a garden, right? So that you can grow good things, right? Yeah. Well, today's story was from Mandy Huizenga. We're going to put the car away because you can help us tell the story. And it relates to our land. So now for thousands of years, in this land that we live on, Native Americans lived here. And then Europeans came. And the Europeans who came here thought that their way was the best way. And so when they came to Turtle Island, to the Americas, they brought their different ways. Oh, thank you, sorry, guy. So first they came and they took the land, and they became owners of the land instead of sharing it. They took over, they controlled the land, and the native people who lived here, many of them died or were hurt or were forced to live in very different ways from what they were used to. And there's a word that I use to describe this, controlling of land, and many people use this word, controlling of the land and the people who live on it, is called colonization. So the Europeans added colonization to the soil. Yeah, go ahead and pour that in. Okay, and so Lucas, can you show it so that the adults can see? So we've added colonization to the soil. And the Europeans also brought a new way of being together. And this way of being together didn't allow women to own property or have jobs or even vote. And this way of organizing society is called patriarchy. And that's a kind of a fancy word. It means that this idea is that men are better than women. And so the Europeans added patriarchy to the soil. Oh, you're tired of adding to the soil? Okay, yeah, Lucas wanted to do it. Okay, so can we show the adults? So now we have colonization and patriarchy. Yes, thank you, Lena. All right. And so then the Europeans decided that while the land was rich and could grow a lot of things, they could get even richer if they forced other people to work for them. And so Europeans also brought slavery into America. They forced people from Africa onto ships, brought them across the ocean, and they made these enslaved people work the land without any compensation. And so they added slavery to the soil. So it looks like we've got colonization and patriarchy and slavery. And over time, there were some other things that were added to the soil as well. And there's quite a lot of things. And so y'all can add the sand as I'm speaking and then just show it to the rest of the adults. So not letting people love the person that they want. And also not helping people who are disabled are also, and we're not going to put these oppressions in one for one because there's even some that aren't even listed here. So, but as an example, making it difficult for poor people to earn money. It's a lot more expensive to be poor than it is not to be poor. Making voting hard for poor people and for people of color, for women and Native Americans. Putting in people in prison for little problems. Crime is primarily a social construct. Polluting our soil, our air, and our water. Okay, so let's see, what do we got here? Yeah, that's the last one. So can we show the people what that looks like? You see, we have all these layers of oppression that are around us. And so the word that I use for all these things is called supremacy. And that's a really big word, but it means a small group of people control many different things in the world and make it really hard for people who aren't part of that dominant group to live, to thrive. Now, some of these things that were added to the soil were somewhat changed over a long period of time and a lot of struggle. So, for example, women are allowed to vote and hold jobs. There is no longer slavery with like a little asterisk. So now is the time. Let's see if we can take some of this oppression out. I don't know, can you even get down to the dirt? See, and let's show what's going on. We took a couple out, but we only got a little ways down. We can't even get down to the. Do you want to try, Lena? She dug really deep. All right, look, she got a lot of layers. Let's show it again. So it just says, it doesn't really get to the root of everything. It just sort of mixes it all up a little bit. All right, so we've got those in there. We'll take it back and you can play with it in the nursery too. So all those oppressions, they still exist just in different ways. And so as we see in many states, women or people who can get pregnant aren't allowed to do what they want to do with their bodies. The way that chattel slavery existed 200 or 400 years ago is gone, but it's got newer forms because people who are not paid well, there's poor people and people in prison. It's actually legal to enslave people who are in prison. Rich people get richer, poor people are getting poorer. So all these things are still in the soil. So we have the soil here, and it's all still there. It's really complicated. And how can good food and other good things grow if we have all this bad stuff in our soil? How can we be healthy if we can't grow good food or have good things in our lives? So what we can do to get to the good soil is to do hard work. Because the sand is really small, it gets into everything. But if we want to be healthy and live in a world where everyone is cared for, where everyone can thrive, we do need to do the work of removing the sand. And the best way to do that is to work it together, to plant seeds of love and justice in the world. And that's the work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and what guests at your table is all about. Learning the ways that people are planting those seeds of justice, supporting the ones who are planting those seeds, and thinking about how we ourselves can plant seeds of justice. And so during the service today, you'll be offered boxes. Many of our boxes have pictures of the people that are beneficiaries of this year's guests at our table. And the invitation, and we also have booklets, it's all about them, is invite one of these people to your table. Just like if you have a guest at your table, you talk to them, you ask them about their lives and what's important to them and the work that they do. And so invite that guest to your table. There's 4, so each week invite one and think about their work, learn about their work and think about their work. It is a fundraiser, but it's also an awareness raiser. So don't forget that part about learning about the partners, the guests of the service committee. All right, so are you ready?
Back to their classes with hymn number 414 as we leave this friendly place.
Each Sunday, we take half of the non-dedicated offering that is received and share it with a local organization whose values and goals reflect our own. This quarter, we are supporting the Native Prairies Association of Texas, a nonprofit land trust that works to protect native prairies, grasslands, and interrelated habitats. The offering, which we take every Sunday, is an opportunity for us to dedicate ourselves to the journey we're making together, with the vision of a world made whole. The Native Prairies Association of Texas fits right in with our vision and will be our Share the Plate partner through the end of March. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. Will the ushers please come forward? Oh, I was going to say, it says we're going to have a solo by Della, but she is ill today, so instead we get a solo by Misha.
At this time in our service, we pause to honor and give time and attention to those things most important to us. We gather here for healing and for peace in our hearts, and to honor our time together with the shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week, there's a journal outside the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory and hope before the service. Also, at any time during the service, you're welcome to light a candle in our meditation area. Today in the Book of Memory and Hope, we have a note about healing broken or hurting relationships. Particularly, we're keeping Anthony and Ariel in mind. Last week I told you, or we learned that Debbie Wren had had a stroke, church member. Today I learned that she will be entering hospice. Oops, sorry. So whether the coming days bring us joy or sorrow, may the deep peace and love of this community sustain us. We pause at this time to hold and honor the very personal joys and sorrows of the congregation. Please now join us in silent reflection, followed by a musical interlude.
As Sarah discussed in the Story for All Ages, today's service is focusing on the Guest at Your Table program. The Unitarian Universalist Service Committee is an organization that works to promote human rights and social justice around the world. And we have materials available in the lobby this morning that talk about the program, the beneficiaries, and how the money is spent. So feel free to please stop by that table and pick up some material, and also boxes. Now, these boxes, for those of you who have been around for a while, will ring true. In the days of old, when we did Guest at Your Table, we would all take a box home, put it on our dining room tables, and then every time you sat down to eat, you would also offer something to the guest at your table by putting money in it. None of us have cash anymore, but we still want you to take a box home and figure out a way that works best with your family's needs to utilize this tradition. One thing that Julia said is that she puts her guest at your table box on her dryer, because you know all those coins that you collect that come in the laundry? Right into... Obviously, you didn't need that money, or you would have taken it out of your pockets, right? So feed your guest at your table. Regardless, take a box and have it sit in your house so that you can see it and you can welcome the guest at your table every day into your house. This program will be going on through January 28th, at which point we'll collect up the boxes. And so, we'll bring them back then. Also, if you wanted to just make a donation today, that will be available. That option is available also out in the lobby at the table. So, there's many ways to give. Please join the Reverend Julian Jamaica Soto for a sermon now that celebrates the tradition of generosity and action that is our Guest at Your Table program.
It takes 1 day and 22 hours to ride the train from Chicago, Illinois to Portland, Oregon. Several years ago, I completed that journey, arriving in downtown Portland on a Sunday morning. Naturally, I wanted to go to church, so I looked on the internet for a congregation that would be meeting soon after my arrival. As I made my way there on the light rail, I wondered if I would be welcome, since all the luggage from my trip could communicate to a casual observer that I was not just traveling, but perhaps houseless. I worried that people would be judgmental. Instead, something happened that changed my life. Today, I will invite you to connect with Guest at Your Table partners and choose to act. But you must be clear on what is at stake and choose liberation. In the 2023 Berry Street essay, Reverend Cecilia Kingman describes the 10 tactics of fascism from the work of Jason Stanley, including the targeting of the poor as part of the most vulnerable and as part of creating an enemy, which an authoritarian leader can then target and punish. Can we together create conditions in which we can address poverty and seek freedom in our communities? That Sunday, I drove my mobility scooter up the block toward the entrance of the church. I could see the entrance from the sidewalk. A senior gentleman wearing a green sweater was handing out orders of service and greeting folks as they came in. Then he saw me. The greeter ran toward me to smile and say that I was welcome in worship, that he knew just where I could park my scooter, that there would be a safe place for my suitcases. This, friends, is what it means to have a guest at your table, to open your heart, to marshal your resources, to say yes, 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 to be free to love and share, and together create new possibilities. In the Hebrew scripture, the importance of hosting guests, of embodiments of hospitality, is emphasized over and over. One story of hospitality begins with Abraham, the patriarch of the Jewish people, sitting at the door of his tent, probably trying to catch a cross breeze in the hottest part of the day. And God appeared to him. Unitarian Universalists have many ways to describe their relationships with the divine, with what is larger than themselves, with the building of the beloved community, relationship by relationship, and right action by right action. And we are held together, each and all, by this divine presence, both in large and small ways. Large, like the beautifully luminescent webs that stretch across the cosmos, illustrated to us by the James Webb Space Telescope. Small, like the webs of protein called fibrin found in our blood that sew our blood vessels together when they are damaged. It is from this abundance connected to our place in the universe that we can choose to practice hospitality and generosity. When I speak of God today, you have both the spiritual and intellectual freedom to translate that language into the words that bring you to matters and moments of ultimate importance. What you do with that freedom is the means by which you can heal the world. We might often say that we are in difficult times. Let's focus that question. What times are we in now? Reverend Kingman frames the answer this way. We all know that we are in a moment of grave danger. If anyone is left wondering how bad it is, it's very, very bad. It's alarmingly easy, however, for us to grow acclimated and numb unless we pay rigorous attention to the strategies and timelines used by fascists. We are also seeing a rise in fascist thinking within our own faith community. Not necessarily the political ideologies we associate with fascism, but the style of thinking. What will be our response? It matters for us to use the power of imagination to imagine action that can lead to different and better futures. Jennifer Powell, a librarian, writes that she would like to unteach children that fiction is fake. Her definitions are that nonfiction is learning through information, and fiction is learning through feelings. Thus, the story of Abraham receiving guests at his table doesn't have to be nonfiction to teach us deeply. Abraham was sitting in his tent, and God appeared, in this case as three men. Tradition says that the commandment of hospitality was so important to Abraham that he lifted all the sides of his tent so that he could see potential guests approaching from any direction. In order to fulfill what it means to practice hospitality and reach beyond ourselves, we must be ready to seize the opportunity. Guest at your table is a decades-long tradition by which people of all ages and varied interests connect, learn, and act on important human rights aspects. For some of you, the opportunity to respond to the challenge of climate change by supporting, along with other partners, the work of Pacific Island students fighting climate change will call you to action and the practice of abundance. Much as you will see the story of Abraham, who jumped into action. God may appear to you as the opportunity to be transformed. Abraham looked up and saw three men standing, He ran from his tent to greet them and bowed before them. He said, "Stop for a while with your servant. I'll get some water so you can wash your feet. Rest under this tree. I'll get some food to refresh you on your way, since your travels have brought you across my path." The Unitarian Universalist Service Committee partners with el Fundación para la Justicia y el Estado Democrático de Derecho, FJEDD, the Foundation for Justice and the Democratic Rule of Law in Mexico City, for the express purpose of supporting human rights and democracy, which includes accompanying folks, individuals, communities, families who have been impacted by human rights violations. As people who value the power of personal choice, you can encounter that struggle and determine you will affect it. By your support, you can interrupt it. You can make more freedom for others. Most Unitarian Universalists will not have the opportunity to be hospitable to those folks directly. Not as Abraham was to the visitors, to cook them a meal or offer them rest. You will most likely not march for their rights, but you can offer lifelines of financial support to this work through your giving. The ability of the southernmost neighbor of the United States to maintain the rule of law affects people in the United States directly. The Guest at Your Table program is one way you can make an actual difference. And in creating change, yourself be changed for the better, toward your favorite self. When Abraham offered the 3 men hospitality, they said, "Certainly, go ahead." God may appear in the opportunity to take action that calls on your skills, gifts, and resources. What in your life is saying yes to you? Who is waiting for you to join their work or waiting to join with yours? Not only are these connections important for building community, they also show how, while we share in the work of human rights together, we can learn new ways in which to rise up and resist fascism. In Italy, one story of resisting fascism came from women who rejected Mussolini's propaganda against pasta. From 1925 until his regime fell in 1945, Mussolini fought the battle for grain. He wanted people to eat rice, which could be grown domestically, unlike pasta, which required imported wheat, mostly from Turkey. By creating an underpaid labor market that included many homemakers, Mussolini exerted control over domestic foodways, or the eating habits and culinary practices of the people. His goal was to limit trade and close the economy, with the intent of stabilizing food production and raising birth rates to produce more fascist fighters for the future. The government passed out rice and pamphlets with recipes and propaganda at rallies. To eat rice was to eat for the regime. Jenny Long writes that to ensure those households in the South broke with regional culinary habits and followed the new nutrition guidelines, the regime suggested that pasta made Italians heavy, brutish, and slow. This caused an outcry. Southern Italian women banded together in defense of pasta and wrote protest letters in adoration of their beloved food of angels. Food of angels, their pasta. In the South, people refused to eat rice. No offense to rice, but they fed it to their dogs rather than submit to Mussolini's plan and discard their beloved traditional pasta. In the North, people did eat rice, but as resistance, they sang songs. You may have heard Bella Ciao, which has enjoyed a resurgence during the time of COVID-19. This was a song that the women reading the rice paddies for intentionally low wages sang as a hymn of defiance to terrible working conditions and to Mussolini's plan. Resistance comes in many forms. Resistance is courage. God may appear reflected in the people you love and the things you care about. Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. He said, "Hurry, get 3 cups of our best flour, knead it, and make bread." Do you ever feel like the world is too broken for you to affect it? The problems too deep? The corruption too rotten? Sometimes your resistance to the things going wrong in the world needs only to be that you are completely yourself. What about others, including your trans and queer beloveds and their communities? Can they be themselves? This is a crucial question for Unitarian Universalists confronting fascism and for lovers and workers of human rights. The answers are as common and crucial as flour, as doing what you know, as loving who you love, and loving those you may not understand. The United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner makes it plain that gender expression of trans people is part of their human rights, with these words: "At the root of the acts of violence and discrimination, including lack of access to gender recognition by the state and violence in healthcare settings, lies the intent to punish based on preconceived notions of what the victim's gender identity should be, with a binary understanding of what constitutes a male and a female, or the masculine and the feminine. These acts are invariably the manifestation of deeply entrenched stigma and prejudice, irrational hatred, and a form of gender-based violence driven by an intention to punish those seen as defying gender norms. Punishing freedom." Your Unitarian Universalist Service Committee has partnered with Queer Svit because since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, more than 62,000 people have died, nearly 60,000 have been injured, and roughly 14 million have been displaced. What follows is that racism, homophobia, and trans antagonism impact which evacuees receive help escaping danger. 2 Black non-binary people, a Ukrainian trans woman and a Ukrainian gay man, came together to found Queer Svit. Queer Svit's aim is to assist Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ+ people impacted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Queer Svit provides evacuation, temporary housing, and relocation support, along with legal support and physical and mental health resources. Resistance is justice. The story of Abraham concludes with action and service. You will find him doing what is needed, creating respite, a temporary home of care for the travelers. Then Abraham ran to the cattle pen and picked out a nice plump calf and gave it to the servant, who lost no time getting it ready. Then he got curds and milk, brought them with a calf that had been roasted, set the meal before the men, and stood there under the tree while they ate. The National TPS Alliance does much the same. TPS here stands for Temporary Protected Status, which is an immigration status granted to some people who come from countries where they are unable to return safely due to conditions like armed conflict or environmental disaster or epidemic. The benefits of TPS include protection from being deported or removed from the United States, legal authorization to work, and authorization to travel. These are all things that demonstrate the value of human lives, even in migration. TPS holders contribute to families, communities, and the United States. By offering legal status from abundance for good reasons, the United States, as a host country, receives abundance in return. How do Unitarian Universalist values speak to these priorities? Thomas Aquinas argued that acquisitiveness, or focus on acquiring things, involves withholding good things from others, and thus impoverishing them. Capitalism, in this view, is a zero-sum game. In other words, it is an essential practice for Unitarian Universalists to make meaning from the way that we expect resources to be distributed and from our understanding of who gives support, who receives it, and who deserves it. Rev. Kingman explains that fascist propaganda makes a distinction between friends and enemies. It casts the other as a threat and presents the idea that these others are fundamentally opposed to the nation. In this way, the Trump administration moved to radically scale back the TPS program and cancel TPS for hundreds of thousands of immigrants. The TPS Alliance works to change that by restoring TPS protections and securing a path to permanent residency for all TPS holders. It is humane to resist. Abraham gave his best, prepared a feast, and offered care for the travelers who happened to be divine visitors. Remember that this encounter between God and Abraham ends with one more aspect to consider: joy. That is, you may encounter God in the beauty and delight of being of service and embodying your dearest values, a beautiful feast at a bountiful table. Give to guests at your table because it will bring about the world you long to experience, because human rights are for all humans. Let's close by reflecting on the possibilities offered by Robert F. Kennedy in Prayer for Our Country. Let no one be discouraged by the belief that there is nothing one person can do against the enormous array of the world's ills, misery, ignorance, and violence. Few will have the greatness to bend history, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and in the total of all of those acts will be written the history of a generation. It is from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time people stand up for an ideal, or act to improve the lot of others, or strike out against injustice, they send a tiny ripple of hope, crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring. Those ripples can build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. So may we live. Amen.
And join us in singing, the closing hymn, which is actually number 1007 in the teal hymnal. Telling me that someday
May this flame that has brightened our time together warm our hearts, light our paths, and inspire our vision as we once again go our separate ways. May we recognize the divine when it appears on our thresholds and gladly offer a place at our table. May we look to join with all justice seekers, offering welcome, hospitality, and solidarity. Liberation is not the freedom of a few, but the joyful realization that there is a place for all. May it be so. Our service has ended, and it's Potluck Sunday, so please join us for lunch. But don't forget to stop by our guests at your table. Thank you. I should get out there and get money. Get your boxes.